The gentleman from Charlottesville, Mr. Toscano.
Mr. Speaker, speaking briefly to the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we talked a lot about this bill yesterday, but I went and looked at it again, and I want to assure the body that this is not a living wage bill. The delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Davis, if you would like to prohibit localities from permitting living wages, you vote for his bill, but that's not this bill. This bill has to do with prohibitions against localities imposing a minimum wage on all employers in that locality. For example, if Manassas wanted to impose a requirement that all employers there, including McDonald's, pay $10 an hour, you couldn't do it if you passed this bill. So if you like this bill, maybe you like that. But before you vote for it, be aware that this is already the law of the Commonwealth. It's called the Dillon Rule. And that rule has been in effect for years and years and years. And it's so powerful that when we discussed a new Constitution in 1970, we rejected any watering down of the Dillon Rule. So this is already the law in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's never been successfully challenged in any court case. So again, you have to wonder why we're cluttering up the code with this kind of language. Beyond that, and again, all you lawyers in the room, you might look at the construction of this bill and ask yourself if it creates some potential mischief. So you look at this bill and it says, a locality shall not enact any policy that requires an employer within the locality. Any policy. That would mean if the city of Manassas decided that they wanted to pay the city park workers $10 an hour, which exceeds the requirements of federal policy, which is the minimum wage, the requirements of federal policy, such policy would be unenforceable. Now, think about that for a minute. If you're a smart lawyer and this bill goes into effect and your locality puts forward some provision in their budget that you don't like, and it goes past the federal regs and pays employees of a city or a locality more than the minimum wage, can you then sue and argue that because of this statute, that policy is unenforceable? So vote how you will on the bill, but make sure you understand the full consequences of what you're doing.
Gentleman from Manassas, Mr. Miller.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the minority leader understands the bill now. I was a little confused yesterday. He asked me if I knew of any localities in the Commonwealth of Virginia that were doing this, and I did answer no. And then he started asking me about the other bill that I believe Delegate Davis is carrying in Virginia Beach. Mr. Speaker, this is a straightforward bill. I really can't see how a lawyer can construe this, any of those examples that the minority leader had brought forward. What I'd also say, Mr. Speaker, is I agree. This is against the Dillon Rule. But as the minority leader brought up yesterday, we have at least two localities that have required, other than the national or state standard, in contracts with that government. And quite frankly, I would be not surprised at all to see those same localities try to pass an ordinance that would require every private employer to pay a higher wage other than is required by state or federal law. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, who would stop that? I don't know. Perhaps the employers would have to sue that reside in that city or county. But with who we have in the Attorney General's office right now, I don't think he would actually defend that rule. I think he'd probably defend the locality against the Dillon Rule. Now, obviously, that's just an assumption, but I think it's a well-founded assumption, and I hope the members will pass the bill.
Gentleman from Alexandria, Mr. Levine.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
I would say, Mr. Speaker, that I live in Alexandria, and Alexandria has no higher minimum wage than the rest of the state. The city of Alexandria may indeed pay some of its workers $8 an hour because it decided in a contract with its workers it's going to pay them $8 an hour. If the gentleman wants to prevent cities from paying workers any more than the minimum wage, maybe this bill would do that. But I guarantee you there is no minimum wage in Alexandria higher than the federal minimum wage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 65, noes 34.
Ayes 65, noes 34. The bill is passed.